There was a young girl living peacefully with her parents and siblings, safe and sound. Every day was the same routine: school, home, homeschool. She came from a strict conservative family. Her father ran a tight ship, and her older siblings followed the same strict rules. The man practically had a curfew system running like clockwork. This girl's entire world was house to school, school to house. She never even had the freedom to say, "I'm going to my friend's place." That phrase simply didn't exist in her vocabulary. Same went for her brothers. Their father kept them on a short leash too. If any of them stayed out past 9 p.m., that was it. The door was locked, no exceptions. Sleep outside if you have to. But you know how life works. It never goes exactly how you plan it. One day, something happened that would shake her entire world. A young man started noticing her. Every time she walked to school, he'd happen to be around, and eventually worked up the courage to talk to her. Turns out, he actually lived in the same neighborhood. She'd definitely seen him around before, watching her go to and from school. He told her straight up he liked her, genuinely, and his intentions were serious. Marriage, nothing shady. At first, she was hesitant, didn't know what to say. But eventually, curiosity won, and she decided to get to know him a little better. Turns out the feeling was mutual. For a while, it stayed innocent, just getting to know each other, exchanging numbers. Sometimes she'd sneak out of school a few minutes early just to catch a few extra minutes with him, hoping to build something real. And here's where things take a turn. One day, her older brothers found out. Picture this, her brothers, catching wind of the whole thing, absolutely lost it. The shock hit her like a truck. She bolted straight home to her mother, maybe hoping for some kind of protection. Meanwhile, the poor guy, Jamal, let's call him, took off running through the alleyways, trying to escape. But her brothers caught up with him and gave him a beating he wouldn't forget anytime soon. They didn't hold back. Made sure he knew exactly where he stood. Then they turned their anger toward their sister, laying down the law. She was NEVR, allowed to go to school unsupervised again. Essentially, her education got completely shut down, and just to make sure the message stuck, they made her swear on everything holy that she'd never step outside the house without permission again. But, plot twist, you'd think that would be the end of it, right? Nope. She kept in contact with Jamal secretly, just through messages, and eventually asked him to figure out a way for them to meet up again, even briefly. She waited patiently until things cooled down a bit at home, until her brothers got busy with work and let their guard down. She snuck out to meet Jamal, completely unaware her brothers were actually keeping tabs on her movements this whole time. The second they caught her with him again, things got ugly fast. They grabbed Jamal, and this time, they didn't just rough him up. They went after his ribs, seriously injuring him. He was practically begging, "Please, this isn't reasonable. This isn't fair." But reasonable clearly wasn't on the table for them. They beat him so badly he ended up needing medical attention, filing a police report against them out of sheer desperation while he was still in that condition. Both sides ended up called into the police station repeatedly, going back and forth for questioning. Jamal maintained there was nothing inappropriate happening between them. He genuinely wanted to marry her, had serious intentions, and her brothers had wrongfully assaulted him. Meanwhile, her brothers accused him of manipulating their sister, claiming he probably had far less honorable intentions and was likely planning to take advantage of her. Which, according to them, justified running him off for her own protection. Eventually, after some time, Jamal approached them directly. "Look, let's settle this. I'll drop the charges, and we go our separate ways peacefully." A formal settlement was reached, and that seemed to be that. Life moved on. Now, let's fast forward. We're in a completely different city now, over 200 kilometers away from where all that drama went down. Spring had just arrived. One early morning, a woman woke up bright and early, knocked on her friend's door. They were headed out together to forage wild greens. You know, the kind people gather in the countryside, mallow, wild herbs, whatever you want to call it, to sell later at the local market. It was around 6 a.m. when they finally arrived at their usual spot, near an old, abandoned area surrounded by a large, aging wall. The woman looked around and said to her friend, "Would you believe how much mallow's grown here this year? I'm going in through that little opening over there." Her friend agreed, told her to go ahead. She'd wait outside and join in a bit. So the woman ventured inside, disappearing from view while her friend continued picking greens outside. Nearby, a group of people were harvesting olives from nearby trees. Suddenly, a scream. Piercing, terrified, the friend outside was startled, saw the other woman bolting out of that abandoned area, running frantically, glancing back over her shoulder repeatedly. The olive pickers rushed over too, alarmed by the commotion. "What happened? What's wrong?" they asked. The friend, confused herself, said, "I don't know. She just started screaming from inside." They asked, "Where exactly is she?" She pointed. "She's still in there, somewhere among the greens. She just collapsed after screaming. I don't know what happened." They pressed further. "Why did you run and leave her there? Unconscious?" She tried explaining. Her friend had gone further in because the greens were thicker there, and then, out of nowhere, she just heard this horrifying scream, and moments later found her friend collapsed unresponsive. Terrified herself, she'd instinctively fled, leaving her friend behind, pure panic taking over. It was the olive pickers who eventually went in, found the woman unconscious, helped revive her, gave her water, tried calming her down, but she remained in shock, completely disoriented, unable to speak clearly about what she'd witnessed. Curious and concerned, a couple of the men decided to venture further inside themselves to understand exactly what had frightened her so badly, assuming maybe a snake or some wild animal had startled her. But nothing could have prepared them for what they actually found. There, hidden among the thick mallow and wild greens, lay a body in such a horrifying, gruesome state that words genuinely fail to describe it. It was immediately clear why the poor woman had been so traumatized. The scene was nothing short of nightmarish. Shaken to their core, the men rushed back out, gathered everyone together, and insisted immediately, "We absolutely have to report this to the police." Sure enough, they contacted authorities right away, providing every detail. The nearest patrol arrived swiftly, asking exactly what had happened. The group explained they'd been out gathering wild greens as usual when one of the women wandered further in, screamed, and later they discovered her collapsed, followed shortly by the horrifying discovery of a body. Police officers entered the scene and confirmed the body, though not yet in a state of advanced decomposition, showed clear signs of a brutal, violent death. His throat had been slit, one artery to another, a horrifyingly deliberate act. An initial assessment was conducted, and the public prosecutor's office was immediately notified. Judicial police arrived, followed by forensic and technical teams who documented the scene thoroughly, collecting fingerprints, samples, searching meticulously for any trace evidence. Specialized forensic units were called in to comb through the entire area for additional clues. As for the victim himself, face down when discovered, it quickly became apparent this wasn't actually the primary crime scene. The killer had evidently transported the body from elsewhere, disposing of it in this remote, secluded location specifically to delay discovery. Investigators searched the victim's clothing, found his jacket and pants, but crucially, no identification card, no phone. This meant identifying him would likely rely on matching fingerprints against any existing missing persons reports. Once forensic teams completed their initial work, the body was transported to the medical examiner. Despite thorough searching, the technical forensic team found remarkably little physical evidence at the disposal site, just faint traces suggesting something had been dragged, possibly indicating use of some kind of cart or wheeled device, but curiously, no vehicle tracks whatsoever. Odd, considering how the body had clearly been transported there from elsewhere. Who exactly was this unfortunate victim? He appeared to be in his early 30s. None of the olive pickers or the women gathering greens recognized him at all. Confirming they'd never seen him around that area before, police took witness statements, thanked everyone for their cooperation, and let them go, promising to follow up if additional information was needed. The immediate next step in the investigation became clear, identifying the victim through official missing persons reports. But curiously, despite extensive searching, no missing persons report matching his description turned up anywhere, not locally, nor in any other city or region. Investigators speculated this might simply be due to timing. Perhaps his family hadn't yet noticed his absence, especially if he frequently traveled for work. Eventually, though, fingerprint analysis provided a breakthrough. His identity was confirmed. Interestingly, he turned out to be from an entirely different city altogether, quite far from where his body had been discovered, suggesting close coordination between criminal elements across different locations. The victim, aged 34, was named Jamal. He was unmarried with no immediate family of his own beyond his elderly parents. Police coordinated with local authorities in his hometown, quickly locating his parents' residence. "Peace be upon you," the officers greeted respectfully. "Does Jamal, son of so-and-so, live here?" "Yes, yes." "Were his parents? Is everything all right?" "We're investigating a case and need some information. Do you know where your son Jamal currently is?" The parents, slightly puzzled, explained, "Honestly, he travels a lot for work, sometimes gone for months at a time without much contact. That's just his usual routine." Police gently insisted they accompany them to the station for further questioning. Once there, they asked directly, "When exactly was the last time you saw your son? Did he have any enemies or ongoing disputes with anyone?" The parents, increasingly anxious and confused, kept asking nervously, "Please, just tell us, did something happen to our son?" Finally, the officers broke the devastating news. "Unfortunately, we found your son's body. He was murdered." The parents were utterly devastated, understandably in shock, barely able to process the tragic news. When they were later taken to formally identify him, the emotional impact was overwhelming. According to the medical examiner's report, Jamal had been killed just 1 day prior to discovery. His throat slit cleanly, seemingly without any struggle or resistance, suggesting he'd likely known and trusted his attacker. Police pressed his parents further. "Did your son recently come into a large sum of money? Was he involved in any major buying or selling transactions?" "No, nothing like that we're aware of," they replied. "He mostly kept to himself regarding finances, always said he was just busy working." "Do you have his phone number?" the police asked. "We do, but he frequently changes numbers. His phone was constantly turned off or unreachable." "What kind of work did he do?" "He worked in tiling, construction, specifically laying tiles." "Did he have any known conflicts or enemies?" The parents hesitated, then finally recalled, "Actually, yes, there was an incident. Jamal had gotten close to a young woman, and her brothers caught him talking to her once, beat him pretty badly, even filed a police report against him. But eventually Jamal decided to withdraw his own complaint, wanting to settle things peacefully. After that, everything seemed resolved. He even continued working normally, occasionally still speaking with the girl." At this point, it became clear this was the same Jamal from earlier in our story. Naturally, investigators began seriously considering the girl's brothers as potential suspects, wondering if their earlier confrontation had escalated into something far more sinister down the line. Detectives called both brothers in for questioning. "Do you know Jamal, son of so and so?" "Yes, we know him. We're actually from the same neighborhood, same town. Was there any ongoing conflict between you two?" They admitted openly, yes. There was tension initially. We suspected he had inappropriate intentions toward our sister. When we checked her phone and found messages between them, we confronted him physically, admittedly went overboard, but eventually settled things officially through police mediation, and everyone moved on peacefully. When informed about Jamal's murder, both brothers appeared genuinely shocked and horrified, firmly denying any involvement. Police pressed further, asking for their whereabouts, specifically on the night of the murder. Both brothers explained clearly, our father strictly enforces curfew. Neither of us has ever stayed out past 9 p.m. in our entire lives. We work, come straight home afterward, no exceptions. Their father, questioned separately, confirmed the exact same story. My sons have never once spent a night away from home unsupervised. I've raised them strictly, no exceptions, ever. Even their sister confirmed independently, Jamal genuinely wanted to marry me. After my brothers confronted him that day, though, he completely cut off contact out of fear and never approached me again. Everyone's alibi checked out consistently, so investigators found themselves puzzled once more. Who exactly murdered Jamal and why? Clearly, whoever did this trusted him deeply since there'd been no struggle whatsoever. But what was the true motive? Police focused their investigation specifically on Jamal's professional network in the city where his body was discovered. They visited local construction contractors, showing Jamal's photo around. Eventually, one contractor recognized him immediately. Yes, absolutely. Jamal worked with my brother, actually not directly with me. They brought in the contractor's brother, who confirmed Jamal worked with me briefly, but suddenly stopped showing up. I figured he'd just moved on to another job, didn't think much of it at the time. Tried calling him a few times, but his phone was always off. Police requested and received his phone records from the telecom company through proper legal channels, hoping for clues. They also questioned other laborers who'd worked alongside Jamal. One eventually mentioned knowing exactly where Jamal used to stay locally, leading investigators directly to his rented room. The landlord confirmed renting the room to him, but had no additional useful information. With proper authorization, investigators searched the rented room thoroughly, finding everything undisturbed, no signs of robbery or forced entry, deepening the mystery further. Phone records similarly yielded nothing conclusive, given Jamal frequently switched numbers. Continuing their investigation, police visited local shopkeepers near Jamal's residence. One shopkeeper recalled clearly, yes, I knew Jamal well. He'd often leave around 300 dirhams with me, asking me to pass it along whenever a certain woman came by. Do you know this woman's identity? Police asked. No, never learned her name. She'd occasionally come by, ask if Jamal left anything for her, and I'd simply hand over the money. The shopkeeper provided a physical description, and police obtained his contact information in case the woman returned. Months passed without further significant leads until one day, someone unexpectedly knocked on Jamal's parents' door. Peace be upon you, the visitor greeted. Peace be upon you too. How can we help? Jamal's father replied. Is Jamal home? Startled by the question, the father asked, who are you exactly? I'm Richid, a close friend of Jamal's. The father, visibly emotional, explained gently, son, Jamal passed away, murdered, actually quite some time ago now. Rachid, shocked and devastated, expressed his condolences and asked directly if there was anything he could do to help identify who was responsible. He genuinely had no direct information, but felt compelled to help however possible, eventually visiting the police station himself in the city where Jamal's body had been found. I'm Rachid, a close friend of Jamal's. I heard what happened, and though I don't have specific information, I've known him for years through our shared tiling work. We're both originally from the same hometown. Police asked if he knew anyone else who might have information, and Rachid immediately mentioned another acquaintance. There's a guy named Jawad, runs a small shop, lives locally here. Jamal used to visit him often. Police brought Jawad in for questioning, initially defensive, admitting he knew Jamal, but expressing concern about his sudden disappearance, unaware of the tragic outcome. When informed of Jamal's murder, Jawad appeared genuinely shocked. Police gently probed further, eventually learning Jawad occasionally sold cannabis discreetly, and Jamal had been a regular customer, frequently visiting his shop to purchase small amounts. Jawad's wife was also brought in separately for questioning, and unexpectedly, her physical description matched exactly the mysterious woman previously described by the original shopkeeper who'd been holding money for Jamal. Confronted directly with this connection, initially Jawad's wife denied any knowledge of Jamal entirely. But faced with mounting evidence, she eventually broke down, admitting the truth. She explained tearfully she'd secretly met Jamal at a local market, exchanged numbers, unaware he was actually close friends with her own husband. Their secret relationship continued discreetly through messages and photos exchanged privately. One fateful day, however, Jamal unknowingly showed her photo to her husband while they were casually smoking together, unaware of their connection. Recognizing his own wife instantly, Jawad became consumed by jealousy and rage, confronting his wife immediately upon returning home, threatening her severely, accusing her openly of infidelity. Terrified for her own safety, she ultimately confessed her husband's true intentions, revenge against Jamal for the betrayal he'd unknowingly committed. Faced now directly with undeniable evidence, Jawad finally broke down completely, confessing openly to the murder. We were sitting together smoking as usual when Jamal excitedly showed me a photo of a woman he'd recently become involved with. The moment I saw her face, my entire world shattered. It was unmistakably my own wife. I felt an overwhelming surge of betrayal and rage, but somehow managed to hide my emotions, calmly asking him more about her, pretending everything was normal. That very moment, I decided he had to pay. I casually continued spending time with him, waiting patiently for the right opportunity. Eventually, catching him off guard, I attacked him from behind, slitting his throat with a blade. I then transported his body using a small cart typically used to deliver bread and pastries from my shop, disposing of him deep among the wild greens in that remote area, hoping he'd never be discovered. As for my wife, despite the ultimate betrayal, I couldn't bring myself to harm her, as I still deeply loved her. Instead, I threatened her severely, warning that if she ever spoke a word about what happened, she'd face the same fate. The case was formally handed over to the public prosecutor's office, moving forward for judicial proceedings. Physical evidence, including forensic samples collected from the original disposal site, matched conclusively with items found at Jawad's shop, corroborating both confessions entirely. Ultimately, the court delivered its verdict. Jawad's wife received a prison sentence for complicity and concealing evidence of infidelity, while Jawad himself was sentenced to 30 years in prison for premeditated murder and evidence tampering. And that, unfortunately, concludes today's tragic story, a stark reminder of how quickly life's simplest moments can spiral tragically out of control. This particular case occurred back in 2014. We'll see you again soon in another episode, another story. Until then, take care and stay safe.